Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. My name is Samantha. I'm 29 years old, and I live in a small industrial town just outside Milwaukee. For the past few years, I've run a one-woman digital product firm out of the attic in my parents' aging house. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, or at least it was. I've poured thousands into fixing this house. Utilities, appliances, roof repairs, you name it. While most people my age are out buying new cars or apartments, I've been helping my parents keep their home standing, all while juggling client deadlines and working night shifts. No one asks me to do it, but I've always just done it. It's family, right? But recently, things started to shift. A few weeks ago, without any warning, my younger brother Devin moved into my office space. No discussion, no warning. He's 20 and dropped out of college to chase a dream. He wants to be a motorsport YouTuber. My parents justified it, claiming Devin needed a better space to focus. No mention of the hours I spent fixing up the attic to make it an actual office. No acknowledgement of the thousands of dollars I've spent to keep the house running. The whole thing blindsided me. Devin didn't ask, and my parents didn't even consider asking if it was okay. They just decided, and I was expected to roll with it. And I did. I didn't argue. I didn't say a word. Instead, I started looking for a small industrial workspace nearby. Something to get away from the mess, the noise, and the subtle way they started taking me for granted. I'm not sure when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I became the silent anchor of the house, the one who picked up the slack, the one who kept things running. But what do I get for it? A thank you would have been nice, but no, my contributions are invisible. So I decided it was time to start making them visible, in a different way. I didn't argue when they gave Devin my office. I just started planning my escape. The day I signed the lease for my new office space felt surreal. It wasn't glamorous, just an old brick warehouse downtown, but it was perfect. It was quiet, out of the way, and a hell of a lot more peaceful than the cluttered chaos of my parents' house. It even had a nice view of the street, though the neighborhood wasn't the type that would draw crowds, and frankly, that's exactly what I wanted. I was no longer interested in fighting the wave of resentment rising inside me every time I walked past the mess in the house or overheard another conversation where I wasn't even a person, but a tool to get things done. My parents and Devin, they didn't need me. Not really. But I knew that once I moved into the new space, they would start noticing. They would start to feel the absence. It felt like a weight off my chest when I transferred the first batch of equipment to the new place. A few monitors, cables, and some hard drives. Nothing too drastic, just enough to get me settled in and working on my projects. The less I left behind, the less I would have to come back for. I told myself I wouldn't let it affect me. I wasn't trying to escape. No, this was me taking my life back. I wasn't asking for anything in return. I wasn't trying to prove a point. This was my decision. At home, things were becoming strained. Devin's latest complaint about his broken 3D printer echoed down the hall one afternoon, followed by my mom's voice asking if I could help him get it working again. My dad joined in, suggesting I take a look at the Wi-Fi router because it wasn't working properly. I was used to it. They'd all gotten used to me jumping in whenever something broke, whenever there was a problem. But this time, I didn't jump in. I didn't get up from my desk. I didn't text Devin back. I just let it be. And after that, I started setting some boundaries. Small ones at first. I didn't do their laundry anymore. I didn't take the trash out without being asked. When they tried to drag me into conversations about broken appliances or the yard that desperately needed attention, I just didn't engage. The house began to show the signs. Dishes started piling up on the counters. Devices began to glitch and die. The lawn was left unkempt, and the weeds overtook the flower beds. I didn't feel a thing. It wasn't my problem anymore. I wasn't going to keep picking up the slack just to be invisible. They were going to have to deal with it. By the end of the month, I was no longer just absent physically. I was emotionally checked out. My presence had become a habit to them, a default setting they took for granted, and I wasn't going to let them forget how much I had been doing, without so much as a thank you. I knew it was going to be hard, but for the first time in my life, it felt right. It was a Wednesday when I came home to find my custom-designed standing desk gone. The spot where I'd spent hours setting up my work, where I'd crafted client presentations, brainstormed ideas, and created products. It was just an empty space now, and my heart sank as I processed what had happened. I found my dad sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine like nothing was wrong. Where's my desk? I asked, my voice steady but low, the kind of tone you use when you already know the answer but need them to say it out loud. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, and he didn't even look guilty. Oh, that I sold it. Devin needed a proper filming setup. It was just furniture, Sam. Just furniture. My fingers curled into fists, but I didn't react with anger. Instead, I felt this eerie calm settle over me, a kind of cold resolve I couldn't shake. It wasn't about the desk, it was about everything it represented. My time, my money, my hard work, all reduced to something dispensable. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I didn't beg him to understand. I just nodded once, the sharp ache of betrayal gnawing at my insides. Right, I muttered, swallowing the lump in my throat. That night, I rented a moving van. I didn't tell them, of course, I didn't say a word, but I began packing. Box after box, I moved my things into my new office. Little by little, I started to create the distance I needed. I wasn't going to keep letting them strip away everything I worked for. By the time Saturday came around, I had most of my gear packed, ready to go. The process was methodical, quiet, and inevitable. I knew it would shake them. I could already sense the tension in the air, the way my dad had started grumbling about chores he hadn't done, the way my mom snapped at me over dinner, not even trying to hide the exhaustion in her voice. But I couldn't care anymore. Devin, oblivious to it all, was too wrapped up in his own YouTube dreams. That morning, he came into my room to ask for help setting up a new mic. I barely looked up from my boxes as he stood there, staring at me expectantly. "I'm busy," I said flatly. "Can't help you." He blinked, a mix of confusion and frustration crossing his face. "What? You can't help me. You've got all this tech stuff." I didn't meet his eyes, still packing. "I've got my own things to do." And just like that, he left without another word. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I just felt detached. I was taking my life back, piece by piece, and this was part of it. The house continued to crumble without me. Little things piled up. The Wi-Fi died, the garbage sat in the corner, and appliances kept breaking. But I didn't fix them. Not anymore. I wasn't coming back to hold their hands, not when they didn't appreciate what I did in the first place. Saturday morning arrived, and I was already at the office, packing up the last of my things. Box by box, I moved everything out. Monitors, keyboards, cables, even the art I had hung to make the space feel like mine. I didn't make a big show of it. I didn't want to give them any more drama to cling to. When I came back home that afternoon, I didn't expect any big reactions. I'd been gone enough during the week to make the transition feel like it had already begun. But as soon as I stepped into the house, my mom's voice rang out from the kitchen, a familiar high-pitched wail. "Samantha," she cried, "what is going on? Where are you going with all this stuff?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I kept walking, grabbing another box, loading it into the car. She came into the hallway, eyes wide, and her hands fluttering like she wanted to grab me, stop me. "You're really just leaving?" she asked, her voice cracking. I didn't even flinch. "I am." My dad appeared in the living room, his face tense, but he said nothing for a moment, just watched me, as if waiting for some kind of excuse. When none came, he muttered, "This is childish, Samantha, immature." Devin was next. He'd been upstairs, probably binge-watching whatever his latest YouTube obsession was, and came out looking confused. He blinked, looked at the boxes, then back at me. "What's all this?" I closed the trunk and straightened up, turning to face him. "I'm moving out, Devin. I'm done." He scoffed, rolling his eyes. "You're serious? You're just gonna leave?" "Yeah, I am," I said, keeping my voice calm, even though a storm brewed inside me. "You're old enough to figure things out on your own, and so are Mom and Dad. You'll survive." He frowned, the words catching in his throat. But you were supposed to help me set up my studio? We had a deal." I didn't react. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just desperate, and I wasn't going to let it pull me back. I'd been his backup for too long. "Devin, I can't keep doing everything for you," I said, my words deliberate, "and I won't." Silence fell over the house like a heavy blanket, and I turned back to my packing. But before I could grab another box, I heard my mom again. "Sam, please don't do this. It's just a phase. You're upset. We can fix things." She was close to tears now, a desperate edge in her voice. I stopped and turned, facing her. "This isn't a phase, Mom. This is me finally taking my life back." The house felt smaller as the words hung in the air. I went into the kitchen and grabbed a pen, a piece of paper. Then, with cold precision, I wrote it out. A list of everything I had contributed. financial support, labor.tech help, the countless hours I'd spent fixing things around here while no one else bothered to pitch in. I left the note on the fridge alongside my final message to them. You took and took and took, but none of you ever gave back. I didn't say goodbye. There didn't need to be a final hug or a tearful farewell. I didn't owe them anything. By the time I closed the front door behind me, I was shaking. But for the first time in years, I felt free. The first week after I left, the house began to fall apart in a way that was almost painful to witness. It wasn't a sudden thing, more like a slow unraveling, as if the weight of all the things I used to do had come crashing down on them. The Wi-Fi died, not a surprise considering I'd been the one to reset the router whenever it glitched. The lawn, it grew wild and unruly, no one stepping in to mow it. The kitchen sink started to back up, and I wasn't there to fix it. I could practically feel the panic rising when my phone began to ring. Mom's voice came through first. Sam, honey, the Wi-Fi isn't working. Can you come over and look at it? I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. She expected me to drop everything and come running, just like always. I stared at my phone for a moment before answering, my voice calm but firm. Mom, I'm not coming over to fix it. I'm charging my consulting rate now. I'll walk you through it over the phone, but that's the best I can do. There was a long silence on the other end. You're really going to do this to us? She finally asked, her voice teetering on the edge of panic. I'm just doing what you've taught me, I replied. You only come to me when there's something broken. I'm done being your fixer. I hung up before she could protest any further. It wasn't just Mom. Dad called next, about the washing machine. Sam, the washer's on the fritz. Can you come take a look? We really need it fixed. Dad, I'm not going to fix it, I said simply. I'll help you figure it out if you pay me for my time, though. Another silence, thick with disbelief. You're serious? I am. Then came Devin. His voice was more urgent. Samantha, the mic's not working for my stream. How am I supposed to upload anything if it's broken? Can you come set it up? I sighed, feeling the weight of his entitlement press on me. No, Devin, I'm not coming. You'll have to figure it out. You've got all the gear you need. I'm not your personal tech support anymore. His response was a mixture of disbelief and anger. What the hell, Sam? You're not even going to help me out? You were always there for me before. Yeah, and look where that got me, I replied, the words sharper than I intended. I'm done, Devin. You're on your own. As the days passed, the house grew quieter in a way that felt almost suffocating. Mom and Dad began scrambling to find solutions. They couldn't manage the basics without me. Devin's YouTube stream stalled, his equipment barely working. No one knew how to fix it, and no one was stepping in to help. The turning point came when they finally reached out, asking if I could come over and help them with the water heater. The pipes had burst, and no one knew what to do. I wasn't going to just walk over and fix it like I always did. This time, I set my terms. I told them I'd walk them through it over the phone, but only if Devin was there to learn the process. If he wanted to run a business, he had to understand how to take care of it himself. At first, they resisted, but when they realized they couldn't do anything without me, they reluctantly agreed. I knew this moment would come, when they would have to face the consequences of never learning how to do things for themselves. I walked them through everything from my new space. I showed them repair videos, installation steps, and safety tips, not giving an inch for excuses. Devin's resistance was evident, but I didn't back down. This was no longer about fixing things for them. This was about making them stand on their own 2 feet. And when it was over, I left them with one final piece of advice. Devin needs to get a job. He needs to contribute to this house or get out. There's no other way around it. For the first time, my father stood behind me. You're right, he said, his voice low but firm. Devin, you need to step up. That was the moment I realized I had finally crossed a line in my family dynamics. For the first time, I wasn't the one fixing everything. I wasn't the savior. I was forcing them to face the consequences, to grow up, and somehow, in the process, I had become the one who was in charge of their future, even if they didn't realize it yet. By the time my family called asking for help with the water heater, it was clear they had no idea how to manage without me. The phone rang late on a Wednesday night, the sound of my mom's anxious voice filtering through the speaker. Sam, the water heater's broken, she said, her tone edging into desperation. We need you to come fix it. We've tried everything. I exhaled slowly. My patience had long since worn thin, but I wasn't going to let them off the hook, not anymore. I'll help, I said, but there's a condition. Mom's voice grew small. What kind of condition? Devin's going to learn how to fix it, I stated flatly. He's been running this little brand of his for months now and still doesn't know how to fix a basic appliance. If he wants to be treated like an adult, he needs to learn how to do adult things. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Devin doesn't really know anything about that kind of stuff. Exactly, I replied. So it's time he learned. If he's serious about being a YouTuber, maybe he should start by fixing things around the house. I'll walk you through the process, but Devin's going to have to listen, and he's going to have to work for it. Devin's voice cut through the conversation, muffled but distinct. What's going on? Nothing that concerns you, I snapped, voice sharp. Just get ready to learn. There was resistance. Devin dragged his feet, as expected. He argued about how busy he was, how this wasn't part of his brand, and how the water heater wasn't even relevant to his channel. But I wasn't backing down. You either get in there and help, or I'm hanging up. Finally, after some prodding from Dad, Devin reluctantly agreed. I gave them a time, noon the next Saturday. I'd be at my office, and they were to come to me. No more running back to their house and fixing things on my own turf. Saturday came, and the power dynamic shifted. I could hear the reluctance in Devin's voice as they arrived at my new office space, the sound of the old, familiar car pulling into the lot. It was a far cry from the chaotic house I'd left behind. They were all standing around my desk, looking at me expectantly. I barely looked up as I pulled up a few repair videos on my laptop. This is how you'll fix it, I said calmly, clicking through the tutorial. Watch it, understand it, we're not doing this again. I took them through every step, every turn of the wrench, every part of the water heater. But Devin resisted, mumbling about how this wasn't his thing, how he didn't understand all this manual labor. I didn't have time for excuses. If you want to live like an adult, you need to take responsibility for it. You can't just rely on me or anyone else to fix your mess. You want to run a brand? Then prove you can take care of what you already have. Dad, for the first time in a long while, actually supported me. Devin, she's right, he said, his voice firm. You want a job, you need to learn to work for it. Fix it, or pay someone else to do it. But if you keep acting like a kid, you'll get treated like one. The words stung, but it was the truth. We finished fixing the heater by the end of the day, though it was mostly thanks to my guidance. Devin's sulking was evident, but he did the work, if begrudgingly. For the first time, he was forced to acknowledge that things didn't just get done because he asked. They got done because you put in the effort. The shift in power was unmistakable. As I closed the door behind them that afternoon, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I was no longer the one fixing everything for everyone. The roles had reversed. This was their mess to clean up, and they were starting to realize it. I didn't need to be their savior anymore. This was about teaching them to stand on their own, and I wasn't backing down. A week after the water heater disaster, I called a family meeting. It was time to set things straight. No more letting them walk all over me. No more, I'll fix it for you, Sam. This time, I was going to lay out everything. The rules, the responsibilities, and most importantly, the consequences. I texted Devin, Mom, and Dad to meet me at my new office space, where everything had changed for me. The old house was still the same, a ticking time bomb of things broken and forgotten. But this was my territory now, and I was calling the shots. Devin showed up first, still in his usual hoodie and sneakers. He barely acknowledged me, looking more like a kid than the so-called content creator he aspired to be. Mom came next, her face tight, and Dad trailed behind, looking unsure of what was about to unfold. I had a table set up with a stack of papers in front of me. The family business, our collective mess, had to be formalized. No more half-assed promises, no more being the invisible safety net. This was about accountability. I'm tired of being the one to pick up the slack, I started, my voice steady. We need to talk about responsibilities, not just chores, but real contributions. Devin, you need to start paying rent. He immediately scoffed. What? Rent? I'm not even making money yet. I can't. Then get a job, Devin. I cut him off, leaning forward. You've had all the time in the world to make this YouTube career happen, but reality's setting in now. You need to support yourself, or you need to move out. Devin opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. No more excuses. You either contribute or you leave. That's the deal. I could see Dad's unease. He shifted uncomfortably, as if waiting for me to back down. But I wasn't about to. Mom, Dad, you're not off the hook either. You've been relying on me for everything. I've covered the house, the utilities, the repairs, the tech support, all of it. I slid a printout across the table. It was a list, the extent of my contributions laid bare, cash, labor, and even the tech support I'd given Devin all these years. Mom looked at the list, her eyes widening as she realized just how much I'd been doing behind the scenes. She opened her mouth to speak, but paused when I continued. You wanted me to be here, but when I needed help, there was always an excuse. And you never even knew the full extent of what I was doing. This is the reality now. Devin shifted in his chair, but I ignored him. I wasn't here to coddle anyone. We're going to work on a budget, I continued. A real budget. I'm going to lay out clear financial contributions for the household. Devin, you're going to pay rent, at least part of it. And if you want to stay here, you'll work. You'll contribute. No more freeloading off me. Dad cleared his throat, a little defensive. Sam, we can't just do this overnight. You're asking a lot. No, I'm asking for fairness, I said, keeping my tone even. You can't keep leaning on me. If you want a stable house, it has to be built on real work, not just me doing everything. Devin slouched in his seat, arms crossed. You're asking me to do work I'm not built for. I'm not a regular worker, I'm a creator. I let his words hang in the air for a moment. And yet, you're not creating anything if you're not putting in the effort. No one's going to hand you success. You need to take responsibility for yourself, Devin. The world doesn't owe you anything. For the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Dad leaned in, his voice quieter but firmer than I'd ever heard before. You're right. I haven't been the best about this, but I'm going to back you up, Sam. It's time Devin started learning how to contribute. I sat back, folding my arms. There was a sense of finality in the air, a shift I hadn't expected. Dad was backing me up. Finally. Good, I said, finally allowing myself to relax a little. We're going to do this the right way. No more freeloading, no more expecting things to be fixed for you. Devin opened his mouth to argue, but then he stopped, perhaps realizing there was no point. He sat back, arms crossed, a reluctant acknowledgement in his eyes. This was a turning point. For the first time, I saw them, especially Devin, realized that things couldn't just continue the way they had. They would have to rise to meet the standards I'd set, or they'd face the consequences. And I was done being the savior. It was time for them to step up. It had been 6 months since I left, and as I stood in front of my parents' house, a strange mixture of nerves and relief washed over me. It felt like a lifetime since I'd been here, and yet nothing had really changed, except me. I wasn't the same person who used to bend over backward, constantly fixing everything. I had finally broken free, and my family had learned to pick up the pieces without me. I rang the doorbell, not sure what to expect. Devin had messaged me earlier in the day, asking if I could come by for dinner. It was a strange invitation, one I hadn't expected after everything that had happened. When my mom opened the door, she looked different. Her face was softer, less stressed. There were no desperate pleas for help in her eyes, no faint tension in the way she held herself. Instead, she gave me a genuine smile. Sam, it's so good to see you, she said, pulling me into a hug. Dinner's almost ready. Come in. I stepped inside, glancing around. The house was different. The clutter was gone. The lawn was well kept, and the kitchen didn't have that stale, neglected feel it once had. My dad was sitting at the table, reading the paper, and when he saw me, his usual grumbling smile broke through. Look at you all grown up. Still don't have time for us? He joked, but his voice wasn't as biting as it used to be. He looked less worn out, less defeated. Devin appeared from the kitchen, a little awkward but smiling. He wasn't the same either. There was a maturity in his eyes now that hadn't been there before, a quiet sense of responsibility. He stepped forward and gave me a brief but sincere hug. Hey, Sam, thanks for coming, he said. I got a job, shipping, down at the warehouse. I nodded, feeling a swell of pride. Good for you. Dinner was simple, but it was warm. And for the first time, it felt like we were all on the same page. Devin and my parents weren't looking at me for help. They were functioning, managing, and living their lives. Without me, we talked about everything and nothing. My mom mentioned that they'd paid back a portion of the furnace bill and were sticking to a tighter budget. I didn't ask about the specifics. I didn't need to. The shift in dynamics was obvious. Devin even admitted, without prompting, that streaming wasn't a career unless it was supported by real work. The admission came with no bitterness, just the truth settling between us like an old, forgotten thing. I guess you were right, he said, shrugging. It's not just about the camera and the mic, it's about real work. It was almost surreal to hear him say it, but there was something calming in his tone, something that spoke of growth. I didn't have to be the one to tell him anymore. He'd learned that on his own. As we finished dinner, I sat back, quietly observing the scene around me. This wasn't perfect. The house wasn't suddenly spotless, and Devin's job was just a start. But it was enough. The balance had shifted. They were no longer waiting for me to fix their lives. They were handling things on their own. When the conversation lulled, I stood up, preparing to leave. My parents walked me to the door, and there was no pleading this time, no guilt tripping. It felt like we had reached some unspoken understanding. "Thanks for coming, Sam," my mom said softly, giving me a tight hug. "Yeah," Devin added. "Thanks." I smiled, giving them one last glance. "Take care of yourselves. I'll be around." And for the first time in a long time, I left the house feeling lighter. There was no weight of responsibility following me. No one was relying on me to fix things. As I drove away, I realized just how far we'd all come. They were okay without me. And for the first time, I was free.